evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello. So I just want to say before we start, thank you to Tompkins Community Bank, Batavia, Rotary for their support. Thank you to GoArt for their support through their Regrant Program. I would like to acknowledge GoArt's support of this project. GoArt recognizes that this gathering takes place on the ancestral lands of the Seneca Nation, part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and acknowledges their enduring presence in this region. I want to give a big welcome to Ben and Erica Kemp, who are here. They will be tonight portraying Ulysses S. Grant and his wife, Mrs. Grant, and they will be discussing Grant's friendship with Mark Twain. After the program, if you would like to come up, there are some items on this table to look at and also some books for sale. And if you have any questions or would like to pose for photographs with Ben and Erica, that would be welcome as well. So please enjoy the program. Thank you.
I'm very pleased to have you join me this afternoon. As you know from the papers, I am a very unwell man. You will forgive my faltering voice. But I cannot think of a better reason to pause my efforts in writing my book than to speak with you this evening about what and who have brought me thus far. I admit I have never been one for public statements, so you will forgive me the use of some notes. Now, I will admit that more frequent exposure to the torture of public speaking has enabled me to do it a bit more aptly. A newspaperman, I recall, when I returned from our world journey, Mrs. Grant and I, he came to me and he said, "General, on your long journey, I heard that you had to make some public statements. How did that go?" I said, "Well, yes, that is true. I will tell you this, I still don't prefer it, but I must be getting a bit better as my knees don't knock together as bad as they used to." Mrs. Grant is here to see that I do not drag you into too much boredom. Now, I've always been drawn to literature. I was privileged by my father in Georgetown, Ohio, where I grew up, to have the use of an extensive library that Father had. I did enjoy that, especially works of fiction, but also tales of intrigue, travel, adventure. At West Point, I must admit I preferred novels to the textbooks, but they were not of the trashy sort, mind you. Now, my first duty station after West Point Academy was in St. Louis. And I had boarded with Fred Dent back at the academy, and he said, "You'll have to go and pay a visit to my family." They lived just outside of St. Louis, a place called Whitehaven. And so I made visits there, and I got to know the family, and it was quite pleasant, the acquaintance. It became a bit more pleasant as soon as Mrs. Grant came home from school. Needless to say, my visits became more frequent after that. And, well, Colonel Dent, her father, was not too keen on the match. No, not at all. But I am persistent, if nothing else. And I secured her hand in an engagement, if only a secretive one. Now, during that courtship, though, I will tell you that we both realized that we shared a passion for literature, and I began to read novels and papers and just about everything for her. Her eyesight isn't so well, of course. And I have done so up until recently. Sadly, my voice does not permit me on most occasions to do so anymore, but now others, interestingly enough, they read to me when I need it, to spur my memories of the war so that I may write my book. Now, that is not to say that I am ignorant in the ways of literature. I wrote all my own orders during the war. Well, I've written many letters, as we all have, many documents in my time in office as well. But those were done out of pure obligation, not out of a passion for writing. Now, it has been my path to dabble in many different vocations. I have farmed. I have, well, at least tried to sell real estate. Oh, I remember even my youngest days hauling hemlock bark for father's tannery. Of course, anything to get out of the tannery work itself. And then again, I had a bit of a military career, if you've heard.
Yeah.
Yes. And I sold leather goods for my father. But out of all these things that I have dabbled with, I never thought I would ever become an author. Of course, being a writer means you have to first have something to write about. Now, I had folks just after the war imploring me to write about my time in the war. Now, I had no reason to do so. In fact, I thought it was quite superfluous to do so, as others had immediately began to write about me. Not only could I not imagine myself writing a book that would meet the standards of the public, much less myself, I thought that my writing would interfere with those other authors who had done such a fine job. Now, to add to this lack of incentive, the requests were made at a time when I had no financial concerns at all. I had, well, what I thought was a fortune saved up, I suppose. And so there were no financial considerations. My family was provided for comfortably. And so there was no reason to write a book. Now, I did agree to write an article for the North American Review on the Nicaragua Canal. Now, I did so for a different reason. I had a motivation. Now, if you know my story, you know that before the war, I was forced to make a journey to the West Coast to report to a duty station there, and it was a perilous journey across the isthmus. And that tragedy, the great loss of life that occurred on that trip. Thank God, Mrs. Grant, even though she begged to go along with me, I did not allow it for her safety. She was with child. And if she had come along, it is most likely that our firstborn, Fred, and possibly herself, would have died on that journey, because many of the children that were Fred's age died. And I thought, we must do something. Something must be done. Not just for commerce, but for the saving of lives. And so I am fully in favor of the Nicaraguan Canal. And so I wrote in favor of it. Now, I thought my 10-page article was quite an accomplishment. Needless to say, I would take ample encouragement to get me to put my pen to paper for something more. Unfortunately, that encouragement came in the most unfortunate way. My son Buck and I became involved in business these last few years. Many investments were made, and our business partner, Mr. Ferdinand Ward, in the end of it, we found out he was a scoundrel. We were bankrupted by this man. We had trusted him with everything. Now, I was very cross and dejected in those very early days after this financial collapse. But I realized that was not constructive in the least. And so I had remembered that the most recent request for me to write had come from Century the fall last. And so I reached back out to Century, as I had refused their request initially. I said, it is now imperative for my family that I bring in some money. They were overjoyed. They thought, of course, if they could get General Grant to write about the war, they'd get some other major figures. Well, I was just concerned with my family. Now, I agreed initially to write a series of articles for Century on the war, different battles. We retreated to our Long Branch cottage. It has been our escape since the White House years. A wonderful place by the seashore in New Jersey. It is at the place that all our children can be with us. Our grandchildren running across the lawn. Nellie, Fred, Buck, Jesse and their wives and the children. It is a place that I have all my treasures together. But it is the place that I started what apparently is a new career as an author. The work has consumed my time, but I must admit I enjoyed the challenge greatly. But I will admit to you freely that I could not accomplish this feat without guidance. After I finished the article on Shiloh, my first article, I sent it off to the city, to Century. And I received a visitor shortly thereafter. Mr. Robert Underwood came down to Long Branch. Now, he did not come right out and say that he was disappointed with my first draft. but he arrived there in a roundabout way. He was a chatty fellow, and he sat there in the parlor at Long Branch, and he said, "General, will you please tell me a few stories of the war?" And I did so. And I suppose he brought the storyteller out of me. I told him, of course, in my perspective. And as I wound down, Mr. Underwood looked at me and said, "General, that is how you must write, just as you've spoken to me this evening. You must write as though you're speaking in your very own parlor to friends and family. From your view, from your opinion." And now, since, of course, Mr. Johnson in the literary world certainly outranks me, I understood my assignment, and I have not deviated from it since. And I must say I was positively enjoying this new writing assignment of mine. I still, even though I was warming up to it, I still was very intimidated by the thought of taking on a larger work, which was already being discussed. But Century was very eager. They had already opened the floodgates of my pen. They wanted to see more. Well, I suppose when it came down to it, it would not be Century that would push me forward and give me the inspiration, dare I say, coercion, to write this larger work. It would be someone you are probably familiar with, Mr. Samuel Clemens. Now, you probably know him better by his pen name, Mr. Mark Twain. He would prove to be my guide and staunch supporter through the rigors of authorship. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you some anecdotes of our relationship as it developed over these last years. Now, the first meeting was, well, from Twain's perspective anyway, a very awkward one. I had just taken office. Mr. Twain came calling, and he was with a senator he was working for at the time, and he came into my office, and I could tell he was very overwhelmed by the situation. He thought himself somewhat out of place, I suppose, or maybe imposing on me. And he came up and he shook my hand, and he blurted out, "I seem to be a little embarrassed, are you?" And he was bewildered. Now, before I could even respond, he turned and fled from the scene. He was obviously very embarrassed. It was very awkward for him. I felt bad for the poor man. He was so humiliated by it. I did not know at the time he had not grown much of a name for himself quite yet. Now, I did have the opportunity, though. 10 years from that time, I went to an event, and I was in the receiving line, and Mr. Twain stepped up to shake my hand. And as he was shaking it, I have a good memory, and I recalled what had occurred. And I said to Mr. Twain at that time, I said, "I'm not embarrassed at all, are you?" Well, I think this put him at ease, and I think it set the tone for that evening and for our friendship ever since. Now, I will tell you this, though. Mr. Twain took a great risk at that event. It was a veterans reunion. And he was to give the final toast. Now, this toast of his was risky. If it did not go over well with the veterans, well, he may not have made it home. He was the last to speak. I would like to share with you so that you may understand how much of a comedic genius this man was. I don't claim to be able to read it in nearly as good a fashion as Mr. Twain, but I will do my best. We have not all had the good fortune to be ladies. We have not all been generals or poets or statesmen. But when the toast works down to the babies, we stand on common ground. It is a shame that for 1,000 years the world's banquets have utterly ignored the baby, as if he didn't amount to anything. If you will stop and think a minute, if you will go back 50 or 100 years to your early married life and recontemplate your first baby, you will remember that he amounted to a good deal, and even something over. You soldiers all know that when that little fellow arrived at family headquarters, you had to hand in your resignation. He took entire command. You became his lackey, his mere body servant, and you had to stand around too. He was not a commander who made allowances for time, distance, weather, or anything. You had to execute his order whether it was possible or not. And there was only one form of marching in his manual of tactics, and that was the double quick. He treated you with all sorts of insolence and disrespect, and the bravest of you didn't dare to say a word. You could face the death storm at Donelson and Vicksburg and give back blow for blow, but when he clawed your whiskers and pulled your hair and twisted your nose, you had to take it. Sufficient unto the day is one baby. As long as you're in your right mind, don't you ever pray for twins. Twins amount to a permanent riot. And there ain't any real difference between triplets and an insurrection. Yes, it was high time for a Toastmaster to recognize the importance of the babies. Think what is in store for the present crop. Among 3 or 4 million cradles now rocking in the land are some which this nation would preserve for ages as sacred things, if we could know which ones they are. In one of those cradles, the unconscious Farragut of the future is at this moment teething, think of it, and putting in a world of dead earnest, unarticulated but perfectly justifiable profanity over it. In another, the future renowned astronomer is blinking at the shining Milky Way, but with a languid interest. Poor little chap. And wondering what has become of that other one they call the wet verse. In another, the future great historian is lying, and doubtless will continue to lie until his earthly mission is ended. In another, the future president is busying himself with no profounder problem of state than what the mischief has become of his hair so early. And in a mighty array of other cradles, there are now some 60,000 future office seekers, getting ready to furnish him with occasion to grapple with that same old problem a second time. And in still one more cradle, somewhere under the flag, the future illustrious commander-in-chief of the American armies is so little burdened with his approaching grandeurs and responsibilities as to be giving his whole strategic mind at this moment to trying to find out some way to get his big toe in his mouth. An achievement which, meaning no disrespect, the illustrious guest of this evening turned his entire attention to some 56 years ago. And if the child is but a prophecy of the man, there are mighty few who will doubt that he succeeded. Now, as Mr. Twain concluded that last line, there was a pause. And it must have been the most anxious time of his life. That is until he heard laughter. And it was coming from myself. I was positively tickled by his remarks. I began some uncontrolled laughter, and I will tell you this, the room erupted. And it was at that time that Mr. Twain thought himself the most victorious comedian who had ever lived. He had broken down my defenses entirely. He overcame us all with laughter. Now, I must say, I have read some, and I thoroughly enjoy Mr. Twain's works. As I mentioned, Mrs. Grant and I went on a journey around the world. When we were sailing in the Mediterranean, well, we had the perfect book along with us, The Innocents Abroad. We read that book there, and it was very appropriate, wonderful piece of literature. Now, of course, I had no reason, again, to write, not about that journey, because newspaperman Mr. John Russell Young was along with us, and not only was he a great companion on that journey, he was also a very capable chronicler, and he wrote a book just after we returned. So I had no reason, I could not, certainly not outdo Mr. Young. Once we returned, we settled in New York, and Mr. Twain has a place in Hartford, and again in Elmira, and so he made frequent visits to the city. He likes to pay a visit every time he comes into the city. And now when he comes to the door, though, if my little granddaughter Julia, wonderful little girl, if she goes and greets him, she always comes back running with an intimidated look on her face, saying, "That man with the wild hair is back, Grandfather." I said, "Yes, it must be Mr. Twain." Now, Mr. Twain, like myself, enjoys a good cigar. But, us being notable figures, there's always a bit of exaggeration. The papers say we smoke 20 cigars a day. That's absurd. Yes. Well, perhaps Mr. Twain did at some point, I suppose, when he was working on his book, perhaps for 24 hours straight. But we are not inveterate smokers. Now, Mr. Twain told me that he had been advised to potentially cut down and possibly even quit the cigars on account of potentially affecting his health. And that is when he told that individual, he said, "Well, quitting's easy, I do it all the time." But all humor aside, unfortunately, the physicians told me months back that I had to quit the habit. It was so much a part of my daily routine, I will admit to you that it was very, very difficult. In fact, I miss the fragrant weed every day. But perhaps it is good for men to have the opportunity to master their impulses. Now, Mr. Twain, on his visits, loves to hear my stories of the war, but at one time I asked him a bit about his story of the war. I knew it didn't amount to much, but he made it amount to much. He grew up in a small town on the Mississippi, Hannibal, Missouri. And as the war broke out, well, there was a fever there in '61, and he helped form a little militia. Now, these little militias, mind you, didn't have much good direction of any kind, weren't really a military force in any way, and that's what happened, of course, to their little band. Well, they had mishaps and misadventures and whatnot, embarrassing predicaments. Now, interestingly enough, this small foray in the Southern rebel forces did not last very long. But if Mr. Twain had not given up on his little military adventure, we found out later in discussion that he would have perhaps met me under different circumstances. My first command was in the area of Hannibal. Oh, probably within a few weeks of when his little band disbanded. And so we could have met on very different circumstances there. Now, I do agree with his conclusion on war. Mr. Twain wrote that war is nothing more than killing of strangers against whom you feel no personal animosity. Strangers who in other circumstances you would help if you found them in trouble, and who would help you if you needed it. Now, Mr. Twain would take his leave and, well, he would go out and live with his brother in Nevada. And that is where he would find himself as an author. And that was where he would acquire his name that he is known by, Mark Twain. It is from his days as a steamboat captain on the Mississippi. It's a depth reading to the depth of the river that a steamboat can pass through. Just the bare minimum, however. A very risky moment for a boat. And I think it's just the very best term he could have come up with for himself. Because as you know, his writing and his speeches are right on the edge. Very risky. Now, we were both Sams earlier in our lives. I went to academy and my name was placed as U.S. Grant. I was born Hiram Ulysses Grant, but, well, the paperwork didn't go through right, and, well, I said, that's not my name on the paperwork there. They said, well, it's going to be too much work to change it. How about you just accept it as your name? Well, I learned to accept it, I suppose, and now the fellow cadets, they said, well, we'll call you Uncle Sam Grant. And that, of course, got shortened to Sam Grant over time, and some of them still call me by that today. But, of course, as with Twain, I achieved a different moniker as well. Unconditional surrender was given to me as a label after the fall of Donelson. I suppose worse nicknames can be added. Now, I fancied a long beard early in the war, but Mrs. Grant did not. And after all, she outranks me in such matters. Now, let us speak more of my apparent career as an author. Mr. Twain called on me fall last in New York. He had heard that I was going to be working on the memoirs. I had decided to move forward with the project. The century had pushed me far enough. He came into my house the very day I was to set pen to paper and sign a contract. It was sitting right in front of me from Century. He came in, he said, General, allow me to look over that contract. And since I trust the man, I allowed it. He looked at it briefly, and he said, General, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. It's the worst contract I've ever seen. He said, General, they're acting like you're a nobody. 10% of the profits. He was disgusted with it. He said, General, let me rewrite it. And then very quickly he said, no, let me publish it for you. Let me make sure it is a success for you. And of course I said, will anyone even read a book by me? I'm not an accomplished author in any right. He said, that's nonsense, General. It will be a bestseller. You'll see. And I trusted him. But I still felt obligated to Century. I said, they came to me first, Mr. Twain. He said, General, if that's the case, don't you recall? You had dinner with Mr. Howells and myself a few years ago. And at that dinner, I asked you to write your memoirs. So technically, I came to you first, and I should have your book. Well, I couldn't argue with it, and his offer of 70% of the profits, I thought he would bankrupt him. He said, no, I'll be fine, General. I want to make sure you're taken care of. He wanted to see my story made. I trusted that that was his main goal, is to make sure it was a success for my family. Now our partnership is underway, of course. Mr. Charles Webster, Twain's nephew-in-law, is taking care of the publishing and selling business. Now they devised a scheme to sell it by subscription. So the Sales agents have been out across this nation already. Perhaps some of them have knocked on your door. Many of them are veterans themselves, being given the opportunity to make some money themselves, but also to help their old commander, and certainly that touches the heart of this old soldier, that his men are helping him once again. Now, the project has not been one that without controversy. The New York Sun, there has been many falsities written about my health in the war, and of course, the writing project. But the worst of them all was the New York Sun article that said that I was not the true author of the work. Said that my editing team, namely Mr. Badeau, was writing it for me. Well, this could not stand. Mr. Badeau was let go, and Mr. Twain was positively furious. He said that paper is nothing but a rag of unmedicated closet paper. He said, I will sue them. I convinced him to stand down. I said, all you're going to do is make the controversy worse, give it more attention. Now it has been said that Mr. Twain, how absurd is this, is writing the book for me. I can tell you it is not the case at all. He is a great supporter in all that I do, and he has edited some of it, but I can tell you this, he is way too busy with his own work. Not only has he just published his new work, you may have heard of it, Huckleberry Finn, but he has also been doing many speaking engagements. Now, as I told you, I am unsure of my abilities and have been throughout, and I laid what I had done so far in front of Mr. Twain, and I said, give me your honest opinion. And all he had for me was praise. He said, your work is comparable to Caesar's commentaries. It is a fine work. But along with the encouragement, he wanted to balance that with some fun as well. He came over one day. He enjoys bringing literary friends to our home in New York, I should say, and he came one day with General Lew Wallace. And at one point in the parlor, these two tall men were flanking my wonderful little wife, Julia, there, and she's in between these posing men, making a fairly comical lineup. But then, Mrs. Grant, she spoke up and said that she was very proud that she'd be able to tell her children that she stood between, elbow to elbow, with such amazing literary men. Mr. Twain looked at me and he said, General, don't look so down. You're working on a book, and when it is published, you can hold your head up high and be a person of consequence yourself. Now, Mr. Twain, along with the stenographer, Mr. Dawson, who has been brought on to assist me, have told me many times how amazed they are at my powers of recall and my ability to dictate very clearly. Mr. Dawson is a veteran himself, and it is nice to have him on the team and next to me. He's incredibly capable. He's a stenographer who works with Congress. Took time off of his very important work there to help me. He's also very adept at the new typewriting machine. I can't make heads or tails of it, but he's doing very well with it. Mr. Twain is very interested in those type of devices as well. I don't get myself involved with them. A pen is enough for me, I suppose. My sons, Fred, Jesse, and Buck, have all assisted as well as my daughters-in-law. They have provided so much support, and of course, Mrs. Grant. She's always there, my steadfast rock. We have reached out to many officers as well to check on my memory and to make sure this is an accurate account. No one could complete a project such as this without such support. It is like when we were in England on our travels, and they said to me at a banquet, they said, "General, you are the savior of the Union." And I corrected them. I said, "I am not. If it were not for those men who came out of the fields, those young men who sacrificed everything in those years, we would not have a union today." I said, there were 100 men such as myself that could have been their officer. It was them. They won. They preserved you. And so it is like any project. It is those that support who deserve the credit. My doctors recently encouraged a change of climate from New York. New York is not a place for a patient such as myself during the summer season. And so we received an offer to go up to a place just north of Saratoga. It's called Mount McGregor, on the heights. And a small cottage has been afforded to us there, and that is where we are now as a family. And it has been said to me by my physicians that it will at least, if nothing else, provide me with enough relief to finish my project. The project is winding down now, and so am I. But Mr. Twain paid a visit to me here at the cottage recently, and he put an old man's anxieties at rest. He said, "General, I know you're nervous about your book, but you do not need to be. Our agents have succeeded in selling 100,000 copies." He said, "We will sell 300,000 before we're done." So I have the assurance that my family will be taken care of. I am forever indebted to this man, Mr. Twain, for making this book a success, but also for his encouragement and his friendship in these difficult times. And I will admit, these last months have been difficult to put pen to paper, but that eternal motivation that rules them all, my family's well-being, pushes me through the fatigue. But it is also an incredible journey of remembrance and reflection to recount and reconsider those fateful days and their great meaning to us all. From the dark foreboding of the first evening at Shiloh, to the rejoicing at the fall of Vicksburg, and the great relief of Appomattox. It was always a great thing to attain victory, but not for the downfall of the foe. It was for the promise of a peace soon. We needed to end that bloodshed, and every victory brought us closer to that. And only then could our nation start to heal. There is always a way to prevent the drawing of the sword. I have never advocated war except as a means of peace. And I hope that the memories that I am sharing in my book and many other veterans, they'll keep alive the terrible nature of this war, so that it may teach us to avoid all wars in the future. I wish to leave an accurate account of this war that changed us all and the lives of those yet to be born. I wish for the veterans to understand the meaning of their sacrifice more clearly. I hope that friends and former foes, many of whom have come forth and supported me in these trying times, that they can find harmony once again and understanding the power of unity and the horrible consequences and destructiveness of division. And that is why I have written for my book a short section that I will read to you now. I feel that we are on the eve of a new era, when there is to be great harmony between the Federal and the Confederate. I cannot stay to be a living witness to the correctness of this prophecy, but I feel it within me that it is to be so. The universally kind feeling expressed for me at a time when it was supposed that each day would prove my last seemed to be the beginning of the answer to let us have peace. The expressions of these kindly feelings were not restricted to a section of the country, nor to a division of the people. They came from individual citizens of all nationalities, from all denominations, the Protestant, the Catholic, and the Jew, and from the various societies of the land, scientific, educational, religious, or otherwise. Politics did not enter into the matter at all. I am not egotist enough to suppose that all this significance should be given because I was the object of it. But the war between the states was a very bloody and costless one. One side or the other had to yield principles they deemed dearer than life before it could be brought to an end. I commanded the whole of the mighty host engaged on the victorious side. I was, no matter whether deservedly or not, a representative of that side of the controversy. It is a significant and gratifying fact that Confederates should have joined heartily in this spontaneous move. I hope the good feeling inaugurated may continue to the end. Now I would like to give you an opportunity, if you wish, as I still have some strength within me, to answer some questions, as this may be your final chance to do so. In this world, however, anyway. Any questions I may answer? Yes.
So the deal struck at 70% for Grant, percent of the profits. That was quite a good deal for him.
Yes, no one could, it was good for you. I suppose he convinced me, Mr. Twain, that it would be a good deal for both of us. But he did not need to be that generous. He was certainly offering something that no other publisher would even try to match. It was certainly and that is what took me aback when he first offered it. I said, this is going to bankrupt you if this does not sell well. But he, of course, proved that it is already a success, despite my misgivings. And he has told me he will do well, despite the cost of all the materials to print. He has convinced me that it will be a good windfall for him and his firm as well. So I am glad that he has succeeded, as well as me, in securing financial stability out of this business partnership.
Thank you.
How long did Mark Twain and yourself work together?
Yes, well, as business partners, only a very short time. He came to me just in the past fall. So it was November last, and it is now getting on to July. And of course, my book project has been necessarily hurried, given my deteriorating health. But Mr. Twain has been there to support me all the time. And even though it has been a very short venture, Mr. Twain has proved himself a very capable and supportive partner in business.
Is it true that he died just a week or a few days before he actually completed his work?
Mr. Twain or myself?
There's something.
Oh my. Well, I certainly don't have a crystal ball. But I will tell you that, yes, I expect that my pen will drop from the paper and it will be a very short time before. Because that is, I have even, and I think my family knows it. They understand that the book is keeping me alive. And as soon as it is known that it has been completed, that it is sufficient. Now, I wish I had more time. I've told Mr. Twain that. I wish I had been in better health. I feel like I could have given a better product, but he assures me that the public will receive it well. And he commends me for my efforts. But, of course, and there is those that had asked me perhaps to write an article of political nature. And perhaps some at a future date will wish that I had written about my political life. Not that it was the one I preferred the most. I certainly didn't prefer the military life either, to be honest with you, but certainly had no interest in politics. In fact, I recall when they first told me at headquarters during the war, not long after Vicksburg, they told me, well, I've heard your name bandied about as a candidate for the Republicans for the '64 election. I said, that's nonsense. They said, it's true. I said, well, you can tell them, and I suppose Mr. Lincoln was interested in this answer as well. I said, you can tell them that I have no interest in politics. I am a soldier and I'm here to end this war as quickly as possible, and that is all. I will not accept a nomination. I said, however, there's one caveat. I may accept a nomination to the mayorship of Galena, as I would like to get that sidewalk built in front of my house there.
So, what is wrong with you? What illness do you have?
Yes, well, I had a soreness of the throat. I noticed at Long Branch last year, and it was persistent. I thought maybe I had been stung by an insect or something of that matter, but it persisted. I had a doctor look at it down there at the branch, but well, I just wanted to continue on with my work. My regular doctor was away in Europe, and he came back in the fall, so I figured I'll have it looked at in the fall. I started to smoke a few less cigars in the interim. When we went back in the fall, it was impossible to ignore. And I went to my doctor. He sent me to Dr. Douglas, a specialist in throat conditions, and he looked at it, and I looked at Dr. Douglas and I said, is it cancer? And he knew he could not, he would lose my trust if he tried to dance around it. He said, it is cancer. He said, and of course he tried to offer encouragement. He said, it's sometimes curable, sometimes. But, and I commend him for that. And he has been a tireless physician along this whole journey. Him and his associates have kept me as comfortable as possible given the circumstances. And it has progressed. Yes, the tumor has progressed in my throat, and yes, it will be fatal in the end, I'm sure. But I have spent every moment possible, with what strength I have left, to make sure that this work I'm putting everything into is done, so that my family will have something when I'm gone. And they have been a great support to me. If it were not for them being here, I would not be here even today.
What years does the memoir cover?
Yes, well, I did start with my childhood in Ohio. Spent some time, a little time, period before the Mexican War. Spent a good deal on the Mexican War, but of course, the largest section, as you can imagine, what the editors were requesting, was the war between the states, and that is the bulk of the content there. Some of my articles I wrote for Century were incorporated. Mr. Twain, of course, had to make a deal with Century. They were quite upset at first. But he put them at ease, said they could print the articles first in their magazine, and then they will be seen in my complete work as well. He has told me he expects to have the work out, the first volume, by the end of this year. the second volume will be published soon after in '86. And I don't expect to live to see it, but I'm sure they'll do a very good job of printing it and distributing it to the many people that have ordered it.
I just want to say, it's so wonderful to meet my grand people. I'm part of the grant, Turtle. But it was so nice to finally meet you.
Yes, yes.
I've done
Fate has
some
brought us
studying,
together.
reading, and to meet you, to find my historical grandfather. Thank you.
Yes, well, it is a pleasure to meet a descendant. Yes, yes, and I imagine we'll have many, as I saw so many of my little grandchildren full of vigor at Long Branch running about. I have no doubt. My 4 children, we were blessed, Mrs. Grant and I, in having 4 children survive to adulthood, and of course they've all got children of their own now. So the Grant clan, I suppose, is making its way and should make its way in the future, so that the name is not lost, I suppose. Yes. Any other questions I can take? Oh, Mrs. Grant, how about you? We retire inside, and then these fine folks can enjoy the rest of their evening.
Thank you very much, everybody.
You're welcome.
If you guys would like, there's some items up here that you could take a look at. There's also some books for sale. If you have any more questions, or if you would like a photograph with Mr. and Mrs. Grant, please feel free to come up. Thank you.